primera vez. Por el amor de una mujer jugué con fuego sin saber que era yo quien me quemaba. Bebí en las fuentes del placer hasta llegar a comprender que no era mía quien amaba. Por el amor de una mujer he dado todo cuanto fui, lo más hermoso de mi vida. Mas ese tiempo que perdí ha de servirme alguna vez cuando se cure bien mi herida. El amor llega así, de esta manera, uno no se da ni cuenta. El carutal reverdece y el guamachito florece y la soga se revienta. Cuando el amor llega así, de esta manera, uno no tiene la culpa. Quererse no tiene horario, ni fecha en el calendario, cuando las ganas se juntan.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
I know it may be hard for you to believe. Please open up your eyes and see the real gift in me. I just wanna sing, I just wanna sing and give to the world what's inside of me. I just have some things I want to.
Good afternoon and welcome to City Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Lisa Coico, president of the City College of New York. As many of you know, March is Women's History Month. And to celebrate Women's History Month, our guest today is a Harlem legend. She is the writer and producer of the longest-running African-American musical, Mama, I Want to Sing. This year, Mama, I Want to Sing is celebrating its 30th anniversary. She is also the founder and executive director of the Mama Foundation for the Arts, whose headquarters are here in Harlem. Vi Higginson, welcome to WHCR and City Talk.
It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you this morning. How are you?
I am terrific. As the weather gets warmer and the days get longer, my life gets happier.
I understand. I'm with you on that.
But no, it's been wonderful, and it is so good to have you with us today.
It's my pleasure.
So tell us, Vi, how are you celebrating Mama's 30th anniversary?
Mama's 30th anniversary. You know, it's really hard to believe that 30 years, it seems like just yesterday. But we are going to celebrate in the place where we reside, which is the New Dempsey Theater. It's located right here in Harlem on 127th Street between Lenox and 7th Avenue. We have a 520-seat theater. We have a home, and I'm really grateful for that. And I want people to see our new spot. I want people to come up and sample our talent and sample our food, because right outside our corridor is Sylvia's Restaurant, Red Rooster, Corner Social, Chez Lucien, all right there, so you can eat and go to the theater, and it's sort of our off Broadway.
And that's such a fantastic thing. You are right, because there are so many amazing Harlem eateries now. But even more than that, how important it is to have a home, isn't it?
It's so important to have a place where you can, incubate new material, play material that people love. And like 30 years, when I think about it, it's dazzling, because I saw in print, it said, America's longest running black musical. And it just really hit me that 30 years, not only did we play 8 years in New York City, but we played 2.5 years across the United States in every major and secondary city in the country. Then we went to Europe, Yugoslavia, Greece, Istanbul, Turkey, all over Italy and Germany and Switzerland. And then we went to Asia, and we went to Japan. And, and we've been going, it's our 30th anniversary in New York and our 25th anniversary in Japan. We've been going to Japan 2 to 3 times a year since 1988.
And think about, it's so astounding for anything to be relevant for 30 years.
For
stretch.
anything.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you think, I have a 30-year-old son, so, when I track his progress.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's still so relevant.
It's also hard to believe. You did ask me how we were going to celebrate. And this is the first time we've ever had a gala. And we thought it was appropriate to have a gala now and not to forget this history and not forget this 30 years happened. And but I was always a little shy, a little fearful about having a gala. And so this time we decided, and then I started to reach out and say, okay, I can't do this by myself. I need some support. I need a benefit committee.
Right.
So I called Leslie Stahl from CBS 60 Minutes, and she said, I'd be delighted. So we're going to honor her that night because she did a story about the Gospel for Teens program. Now, I then called Aretha Franklin, Chaka Khan, Shirley Caesar, Cissy Houston, all of them said, we're so happy with your work and congratulations on the 30th. So these are people who are part of our beneficiary committee for that night. So that's how we're going to celebrate. And we're going to include, it's Harlem inclusive. You see, this story happened in Harlem. It happened on 126th Street between Lenox and 7th. That's where we were born into. And my sister wanted to sing, and my father was a minister, and so that's how we tell that story. And so we are going to celebrate. The next generation is startling to me because the next generation really has the DNA of the original story, because the star of the show is Noelle Higginson, who the story was written before she was born for a multi-octave range. And I can hardly find that multi-octave range today. And she has it, and she's the star. And so the legacy continues with the next generation. So I turn it over to a power higher than me. I don't know how that happened, but I'm thrilled about it.
That is thrilling.
That is thrilling.
That is thrilling.
Yes.
And what day is your gala?
The gala is, you know what? I want you to be there.
I'd love to be
Mark
there.
that date down.
I will.
I want you to see this. The date is the 23rd of March.
Okay.
Saturday the 23rd. And then what we're going to do, we're going to have excerpts from our show, from Mama I Want to Sing, from Sing Harlem Sing, and the Gospel for Teens, the Emmy Award-winning Gospel for Teens, will perform that night, as well as honoring our guest. And then we're going to have a taste of Harlem. All of those Harlem restaurants that I mentioned are contributing to the taste, so you'll get a chance to experience some of the food of our area and our what they call the classic corridor.
That is fabulous.
Yes.
For the listeners who haven't seen the musical, can you tell us a little bit more about the musical itself?
Yes. You see, what we discovered in writing this musical with my husband, Ken Wydrow, is that this is a story of a family who has its roots in the church, but it's the story of American music. It's how music started in the church, found its way onto the radio, and then onto world stages. And that's why I think the story is so relevant even today, 30 years later, because the music really gives you a picture of who we are and where we come from musically. We take you back to an authentic choir rehearsal where the music master is insistent upon precision and excellence musically. And you watch that evolution of that music take place right in front of your eyes. And then you see how the music changes, how we have music from Lena Horne and Sarah Vaughan, and the greats, and Billie Holiday. You get to see how the music evolved from the church and how the music was brought into the secular world and how this young girl was influenced by the music of the day. And so she was conflicted between the music that she was rooted in and the music of the day, but she wanted to sing the music of the day. So therein is the struggle between the tradition and the new, the mother and the daughter, and the music and the secular.
And it's a very interesting because, we have all of these television music shows, right? These music competitions. You have American Idol, you have the X Factor, you have The Voice.
Yes.
But very often among all of those, times often the finalists come out of gospel traditions. And there
Power
were
pipes,
so
baby.
many of those singers, and you listen to
yes,
them, and they
yes.
come out of strong
Yes.
gospel church traditions.
It's true. So many of our inspired singers, when you look back over the history of music, and certainly I'm sure some of the music you play right here at this radio station, you have to look at those voices that touched you, that inspired you, that lifted you, that's something about the power of the voice. And that's what Mama I Want to Sing is about. The voices, not the new way we do things with a lot of technology, but you are heard with the power of the sound of the voice. So a voice like Aretha Franklin, a voice like Shirley Caesar, or any of the other great stars of today are voices you recognize. You recognize by their sound how they discovered their own sound. So that's what Mama I Want to Sing does.
And you recognize their voices whether they're singing a cappella,
right,
or whether they're singing against a whole background of technology and
right,
orchestra.
Right, exactly.
And that's the one thing very often I notice, that there are some singers, they sound wonderful, but if you put them acoustically or you put them, that power is gone because they need the technology around them, where you come up from gospel roots singing in a choir in that church. That power is part of your inner soul, so to speak, that comes out.
That soulful sound that often there was not a microphone and you had to reach the person in the back row. You better have some power pipes.
And not only power pipes, but you also had to have the ability to touch the heart.
Yes. This is an authentic American art form.
That's right.
Gospel is uniquely
in terms of scheduling, and so it's that. But the most important issue that is actually pushing these young men and women away from primary care is financial.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true, because if you come out with a couple of $100,000 worth of debt, if you talk about most and not City College, and we'll talk a little bit because City College is an incredibly financial bargain. But if you've gone through $100,000, $150,000 in debt from your undergraduate college, then another couple of $100,000 in debt for medical school, by the time you get out, it really is difficult in this day and age. I have two children who graduated from college, and you understand how they struggle with how are they going to pay their bills, pay their debt, and then make a kind of life like we did. Figure out how to have a family, own a home, the kinds of things that were more or less assumed in the 70s and 80s in this generation of physicians. It really is a struggle for them.
Yes, definitely.
I think one of the unique things about SOPHIA, and talk a little bit, is we take our students in from high school. So talk a little bit about how you find those students who have this commitment to medicine so early on.
So we actually have what is called, in short, the BSMD program. So we take kids traditionally in order to go to medical school, you go through college, and then at the end of college you apply to 4 years of medical school. So it's a total number of 4 or 8 years. For us, it's different. There are a number of programs like this in the country where you actually enroll kids at the end of high school. And in our case, over 7 years, so you 1 year less than the usual, you actually get a medical degree. Let me start by saying that I trained in Europe, so this is actually the model that I followed. So I went to medical school straight from high school, and it was a 6-year program. So I feel very sympathetic to these young kids who are trying to behave like professionals at age 18. And the way we recruit mostly from the city and the outlying counties. And so our students are applicants from all different high school. And one of the I think the great things that we do at Sophie Davis is that we do not necessarily focus only on scores. You know, students know that you have to have very high scores in order to get in, and in particular, in medical school, there is a very difficult test called the MCAT. We don't use that. We do use the SAT score, the scores that high school students do, but we do not rely only on them. What we do is what we call holistic approach. We interview these kids. We try to figure out what's driving them. What's driving them to make a decision? Are they really committed? Do they understand the challenges of a medical professions? So it's a really actually a quite fascinating process, because these kids at age 16 already have some of them have a very clear idea about what they want to do, and their commitment is really unwavering.
It's a fantastic program, and we're very proud of it at City College. So I'm glad you got a chance to tell people, because it's sort of a hidden jewel at City College. It's a small class. We take in, about 70
kids every year?
A year?
Approximately.
But again, these are students dedicated to primary care, and unlike the national trends of medical schools, many of our students, in fact, do end up in primary care.
Correct.
And they're required to do service
Correct.
after medical school back in underserved areas.
Correct. If you look at the figures, basically between 40 and 50% of our graduates end up serving primary care in primary care, and 45% of their patients are from underserved community. And even though 40 to 50% may not seem too high, in the medical school world, it's extremely high. Very few, if none, of the other medical school in the country can boast such a rate of primary care choices. And
we're very proud of our Sophies. Can you talk about a couple of our superstars? Tell where some of our Sophies go? Yeah, let me say first of all that they're all superstars. They are. They're all very exciting. So true. And the fact that already that some of these kids make it to medical school and to medical license, it's already a great success. They come from backgrounds that are not traditionally the background that generate medical students in this country. Mm-hmm. You know, first generations migrant, first generation college students. They come from part of the world who have gone through major conflicts. So it's really already that. It's a great success. And so we are proud of all of them. That's true. But let me give you two names I think it's important. Dr. Jonathan Woodson, who actually is serving currently as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs. He was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve in that thing. And Lori Zephyrin, mm-hmm. She's actually the first National Director for Reproductive Health for the Veteran Affairs. So as you can see, these prominent national figures in the healthcare system. And we have a lot of senior vice presidents. We have the chair, the chief of medicine at the University of Miami. So it's really, and we have a large number of unsung heroes who provide primary care in the trenches in the every day in New York. So. Oh, that's really, really wonderful. So thanks for talking about it. And for those of you who are out there listening, parents, students, you ought to look up Sophie Davis if you're in high school and you have a real passion for helping others and for primary care medicine. It is a very, very special program. Well, now let's change gears, because you are a physician and you're a physician scientist with many, many publications in a variety of areas. You always talk, and when we talk, we see each other all the time because an interim provost and as the dean is Sophie Davis. We talk about issues of risk factors, environment, what are the risk factors for disease? And you're very interested in heart disease. Tell me, what is the relationship between environmental factors and heart disease? What do we know about it?
We know for sure that a large percentage of the disease is attributable to exposures in the environment. And by environment, we use the broad definition. It includes diet, includes lifestyle habits, includes where you live, what you breathe, the kind of living situation you have. And so while there are certainly some genetic components, so far we have not been able to identify for the complex diseases like heart disease, like a single gene.
Right.
So it's most likely an interaction between environmental exposure and your individual factors, or maybe genes or other things. But definitely in heart disease, one of the most important things is diet. And diet, what you eat is very important. And traditionally, the diet of North Americans and North European is not a very healthy diet. Now it's much better. But when I started to work in this field, United States was one of the countries with the top death rates for coronary heart disease in the country, in the world. And the disease has dropped substantially in the last 30 years. And one of the reasons why it has dropped is because the diet has improved. The serum cholesterol of Americans has dropped about 25 points on average.
What is a healthy serum cholesterol level?
But according to the definition, you should have your cholesterol below 200.
Okay.
200 is really the lower the better.
Right.
And in the United States in the 50s, the average serum cholesterol of American was about 250.
Oh my goodness.
And now is about 215, 218.
Okay.
So the huge drop. And so as a result of that, the United States are not one of the countries leading coronary heart disease and cardiovascular disease. High blood pressure treatment has played a major role. And smoking cessation has played a major role. Weight is very important because not only overweight per se, but because overweight can cause diabetes, can cause all sorts of metabolic derangement of glucose, insulin, and is one of the most important factors in what we call the metabolic syndrome, with this cluster of risk factors that really are kind of called the deadly quartet, because they kind of, a little bit of each can cause really a significant increase in risk in individuals.
And in neighborhoods where there's not access to healthy fruit and vegetables, I think that's one of the things that we see in neighborhoods, underserved areas, where there aren't large grocery stores where you can get fresh fruits and vegetables for a reasonable price. Anything being done about that now to help?
That's very interesting, because we tend to blame the individual. We tend to blame always the person, say, oh, you don't eat well, oh, you should do this. But we did a study in Buffalo when I was at the University of Buffalo, where we look at zip codes. And there are certain zip codes in which, as you say, there are no supermarkets.
Right.
So the only source of food are the corner stores. And the corner store, because of their market and their finances, they very, very limited fresh food. They only sell canned food or food prepackaged, and therefore it's very difficult. I remember in Buffalo there were people that would come from those neighborhoods they had to take a cab in order to go to a grocery store. So it needs to be. It's not just a matter of individual choice, a matter of city planning. And we need to not only create the opportunity, but incentives for people to put grocery stores, availability of healthy food in all the neighborhoods.
Yeah, and I think, and it's even more than just the healthy food. It's the access to an environment that allows children to be out and playing.
Correct.
And we also talk in neighborhoods about when you have a lot of violence on the street, a lot of youth violence, gun violence. Parents don't feel safe having their little kids out playing out in the streets. And so there's an interaction much more that, like you said, than the individual and what he or she
puts
in.
It's very hard to tell somebody that they have to go for a jog if by going out for a jog, they take the chance on their life.
Right.
So, you may improve your lipids, your good lipids, but the overall risk. And the other thing that we saw is that, for instance, availability of park like
Right, green
spaces,
space.
green space, it's very important for the weight of kids.
Yep.
And so, and in neighborhoods where there is no availability of green space, then it becomes a challenge.
So thanks for that, because I think those are kinds of things we all have to be thinking about in general, not just the isolated, can you get this food or that? We have to be thinking holistically as we talk about in terms of the environment. We're going to take a quick break, Dr. Trevisan, and for those of you out there, please stay tuned. We'll be back with some more interesting facts and interesting discussion.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
Italian cuisine in an elegant atmosphere. Grand Piazza di Oro now has a full-service bar, and they offer the best in Italian cuisine. Satisfy your palate with an assortment of traditional Italian dishes.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Lisa Coico, president of the City College. In the studio with us today is Dr. Maurizio Trevisan, City College's interim provost and dean of the Sophie Davis School of Biomedical Education. I'd like to continue our discussion, and we were talking about diet and environmental factors. Speaking of diet, you were raised in Italy, which is known for having a very rich diet. How do the rates of heart disease in Italy and in Europe compare to the U.S.? And what do you believe is a major reason for any of these differences?
Yeah, Italy has lower rates of heart disease. And as a matter of fact, Italians live longer than Americans overall, like the Greeks do and the Spaniards do. So I was not only grew up in Italy, but I grew up in southern Italy. Mm-hmm. And so in what we call the Mediterranean basin or area. This Greek, Spain, southern Italy, we are characterized by a diet that is very healthy because the sources of our foods are vegetable. So we have vegetable oil, in particular olive oil. We have fruits and vegetables. We have traditionally low portions of meats, very little sweets, and therefore we are kind of blessed in a sense because it's very easy for me to have a healthy diet because I don't have to give up. Because when I grew up, I had meat once or twice a week. Yeah. And the meat portion that my mother would serve was very small. So most of the time was vegetables with pasta or without pasta, a lot of fruits, and so it's beans, a lot of beans, and so that's actually it is a shame, however, because we are losing that advantage. The diet is changing. Yeah. We even in Italy we have now fast food. We have supersize. Our kids are getting obese. The portions are getting bigger. Desserts are getting bigger and bigger. And so we kind of losing the advantage. The Mediterranean diet is a diet of poor people.
That's true.
Farmers, peasants who work the land hard, and then they could eat a lot of calories because they spend a lot of calories. Now in urban centers, all the physical movement has changed. Cars, dishwashers, no more fields to work, and therefore you need to be much more careful about the amount of food that you. But it's funny to me because if I look at what I know about the Mediterranean diet and what I see that we sell now as Mediterranean, there is a huge difference.
Yeah, it is
Because
funny.
as
It's not really, because it is supersized portion.
Yeah,
It's got a lot more process to it. And my family comes from Italy, also southern Italy. And when my grandmother came over to Ellis Island, what they put on her I guess the visa to get into Ellis Island was her occupation was peasant. And that was true. She was a peasant. And we ate what we call peasant food. Yeah. So we ate escarole and beans and everything with it, whatever bean you could have, a legume, because that was the diet
that was the major source of protein
of Southern Italians. It's a very interesting, not anymore though. So it's going to be interesting to look going forward.
Yeah. No tiramisu or...
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I want to switch gears for one last question before we wrap up today, because an area that you've been really very interested in and is very important, and a lot of people don't understand, is the relationship between oral health and your overall health. Can you talk about the relationship with gum disease? I know people are usually terrified of even going to dentists, so they don't even know if they have gum disease. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is always something that's been a relatively recent interest of mine. It was fascinating me because it has a very high prevalence. Very large number of people after a certain age have gum disease or gum problems or periodontal disease. So if there is a link between oral health and general health, the high prevalence of this exposure, of this disease, makes it an important public health problem. And so basically, if you have gum disease or periodontal health, you have an inflammatory disease. So inflammation can cause all sorts of changes in the bloodstream, different levels of proteins, other substances that can actually not only damage the mouth, but can go from the mouth and the bloodstream, and therefore they can affect the kidney, they can affect the heart, they can affect all sorts of things. So my main interest has been on the link between inflammation and an infection, and therefore the oral health part, and heart disease. And actually just reviewed, I was a member of an expert panel that was organized by the American Heart Association to review the whole evidence. And so we found actually that there is a very consistent link. People with periodontal disease have higher rates of heart disease. And we don't have, what we say is this is just, we only observe the association.
Right, so you don't know chicken or egg, you don't know if it causes it.
If it causes it, because what happened is that people with periodontal disease are usually less well off or poorer, and there is a gradient of heart disease with the income of poverty. But however, even studies that have connected, adjusted for this, show a link. So there is a fairly evidence. There is about 20-30% increase. Now, what we need to figure out is this: can we affect the risk of disease by preventing or by treating periodontal health? And this is the next step.
Right, which is very important, and I think it's also very important for our audience to know that really you need to get dental checkups.
Correct.
And it's usually like the last thing people do, because it's also very expensive.
Very expensive.
And insurance,
usually not
covered by insurance. And so again, it's another real clinical issue for underserved areas and underserved population and people who don't have the socioeconomic advantage of being able to write a check for a few $100s. But it is important, because the earlier you detect it, you can treat it, and it may have implications for later on other diseases that can happen.
And it's, usually it's been seen as an aesthetic issue. You're losing your teeth, you don't want to lose your teeth, but there may be much more than that. And not only on heart disease, as I said, kidney, there is potential link with kidney functioning disease, diabetes. Some studies have linked periodontal health to actually the outcome of pregnancy, smaller babies, premature babies, because basically the theory is that if you have this inflammation and these inflammatory markers access the bloodstream, then once they move around the body, they can cause all sorts of habits.
It's really it's such an important issue to bring up. And I also putting another plug for SOPHIA. I think we have 5 students who joined us who are pre-dental this year, right?
Correct.
And so they will be doing several years of their education here, and then I believe they're going to Columbia.
They're going to Columbia for the last 2 years.
For the last 2 years of dental school. So we will be producing dentists as well as physicians.
And we should not forget, in addition to physicians, we actually educate physician assistants. We have a very, very strong, nationally recognized and well-known physician assistant program.
And the physician's assistants, also known for short as PAs.
PAs.
We're graduating another class this week.
And we just found out that on their national test, they did above the average. So we
have great students all around. So I can't thank you enough for coming and joining us today. I know it's been very interesting to me. I always learn something when I'm talking to you, and I usually talk to you about school matters. So it's fun to talk about health matters and you as a physician, not only as an administrator. So again, thank you, Dr. Trevisan, for talking us today on WHCR City Talk. The show was produced by WHCR's General Manager, Angela Harden. Special thanks to WHCR's Production Manager, Tina Dixon. Thank you, Tina, for operating the broadcast board. And I am your host, Dr. Lisa Coico, President of the City College of New York. Have a great day and stay warm.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
You don't have to travel downtown for Italian cuisine in an elegant atmosphere. Grand Piazza di Oro now has a full